The videotape that you are about to see was recorded live during a Sunday class by Jetsunma Akun Lamo at Kunzongpeul Choling. Jetsunma begins her classes with a brief teaching to the children of the center. We join Jetsunma now as she continues with the adult portion of the class.
So now for the adult portion. Although I must say, it behooves us to listen to the children's portion. I mention this on a regular basis, and I'd like to mention again that oftentimes the adults will tell me that they enjoy the children's section at least as much as they enjoy the adult section. And I think it's primarily because many of us here are beginners in Dharma, and we really don't like to admit that we don't know very much. So it's a little bit scary to admit that we're listening to the children's teachings and taking them to heart. But that's really okay. Actually, I try to teach the same teachings to the children that I do teach to adults. Of course, I would use a different way of expressing myself. But in fact, the lessons that I teach the children are lessons that should be kept close to our hearts, not only as beginning practitioners, but ultimately as until the very end of our practice, until the accumulation of our practice, until we begin to see result. The making of offerings is a practice that is one of the first things that we do as we begin to enter onto the path of Dharma, but it should never stop. Until we reach supreme enlightenment and there is no longer any reason to return to the world for the sake of sentient beings, meaning that sentient beings are no longer suffering, until that time, it is always, always valuable and precious to make offerings and to pray for others as I'm teaching the children to pray. So it does behoove us to really listen to these teachings and take them to heart. They may be simple, but they are still true. And so I hope that you will do that. You will not consider that they are only for the children. In fact, I find that children often remember to do these little things like make offerings and consistently work towards benefiting sentient beings. And we as adults have so much content in our minds that we forget. And it's wonderful to me. In fact, I had an experience with my daughter the other day. We were watching the news, and we heard on the news about that they were looking for a little girl's body who had been missing for 9 years. I think her name was Michelle Dorn, or Dorr, something like that. And they've been looking for her body for a long time. They don't know what's happened to her. They feel that she was abducted. So we were watching the news, and, well, of course, the tendency is to do what we always do. What a shame, how horrible. And we have sorrow and empathy. But instead, my daughter, who has been trained since birth as a bodhisattva, just quietly got up and she got an envelope. And on the envelope, she wrote the little girl's name, which she copied from the news, and then she said, "Missing for 10 years, probably dead. Please do POA," which is the practice that you do for those people that have died. And then I turned over, and she gave me the envelope, and I turned it over. It was sealed. On the back of it, she offered all the money that she had, $5.87, for this little girl, so that, and she said, "Please consider that I didn't give you the money, but that the little girl gave you the money." And so that $5.87 will be given on behalf of the little girl to build the stupa. And wherever she is now, there will be a blessing for her. See, that's the kind of thing that a child that is trained in Dharma from birth will do. That's how they'll think. These will be the people that people our world in the future. If they are trained like that, what kind of world will we have, and how will it be different from what we have now? Most of the children, it's true, that we see aren't taught to care for others in that way. It's not that they don't have the natural propensity or inclination. It's not that they wouldn't want to. They simply aren't trained. And so when we train our children this way, we are benefiting our children. We are engaging in an act of generosity because we are preparing our children for happiness. And we are creating a better world. And I know of no better way to do that than to train them in kindness and have them practice kindness like a discipline. And our goal should be that they should they should surpass us. And if we're honest with ourselves, how hard would that be to do? I mean, really. They should surpass us. They should be the hope of a better world. And so with children acting and thinking like that, I truly believe that that will happen. So, enough about that. What about you? When we first enter onto the path of Dharma, we engage in a process called turning the mind toward Dharma. Turning the mind toward Dharma usually takes the form of a section in our ngundro, or preliminary practice. Ngundro is actually the preliminary practice, although it is an intense and profound and fully beneficial practice all in itself. And in fact, there are many lamas who, because of the profundity of ngundro, prefer to do ngundro after ngundro after ngundro, again and again and again, doing the same set of 5 accumulations throughout their whole lives, and achieving excellent result, the result of realization. So ngundro is not to be sneezed at. It isn't simply a preparatory practice, but it is a preliminary level practice, and it must be done before other practices can be accomplished successfully. One of the first things that we practice in our ngundro is called turning the mind towards Dharma. And we have thoughts that we are supposed to take into our minds and accomplish very well. We are supposed to absorb these thoughts and bring them close and deeply into our minds. They are thoughts like, this precious human rebirth is extremely difficult to obtain. And the elaboration on a thought like that would be something like the Buddhist teaching, where the Buddha says that of those sentient beings who are now involved in lower rebirths, that is to say, lower than the human realm, like the animal realm, or the realm of pretas, which is the realm of hungry ghosts, the realm of the hell realms, the very lowest rebirths. These realms of beings in those realms, they count about like grains of sand that are present on the entire earth. So how many grains of sand are present on the entire? Uncountable. No one knows. It's uncountable. Endless. It would seem to me that if you began to count the grains of earth, if somehow that could be done in some massive project, that the process would never end. It would simply never end. So it's like that with sentient beings, that are in the lower rebirths now. And in the lower rebirths, there's no chance to practice Dharma because the mind is so filled with the condition of that rebirth. There is no chance to practice Dharma. There's no spaciousness in the mind to stop and consider Dharma. There are that many sentient beings like that, of beings who are in a human rebirth, as you and I are now, not appreciating our rebirth, in fact, complaining about the conditions of our rebirth. Of those kind of beings, it is like the number of dust motes that one could fit on a thumbnail. So you can see there is a greatly larger number of sentient beings involved in lower rebirths than there are sentient beings who have attained the human realm. We can count the beings on this planet. We cannot count the dust motes or grains of sand that fill the earth. Another teaching that we receive, another thought that turns our mind towards Dharma, and that thought, I should say before I go on, is a thought that would cause you to stop, really stop and take notice and get how precious this life is and not to waste it. Now you know that when you reach kind of midlife, I'm 45 years old now, when you reach that age, you look back and you know that you have let go of, let pass through your fingers like water through an open hand, hours, days, weeks, months. I mean, haven't you ever gone from weekend to weekend and gone, where was that week? I mean, I just looked outside and said, where was the summer? What happened this summer? It's just, it goes so fast. We simply let time go through so fast, and we don't utilize the time or take account for it. The experience that sentient beings have as they near the time of their death, and of course, each sentient being in their own way, unless the death is early accidental and instantaneous, will feel death coming on. I mean, we go through passages in our lives where at first life is forever and I'm queen of the world, and then you get to be about 30 and suddenly, what's happening? And then 35 and you're going, what's really happening? And all these ages and passages that you go through until you realize that life is not permanent and things are changing. You are changing. You start looking at the different physical changes that happen in the body, and you realize that we are moving through time. The teaching that life is precious is supposed to make us realize that of all the different kinds of lives sentient beings can have, human beings have the most precious kind of life because there is a particular quality about the way our lives our minds are manifest. We are capable of practicing Dharma. We have the spaciousness within our mind to practice Dharma. We have what is called the leisure to practice. Now, most of us think we don't have even 10 minutes worth of leisure every week or every day. We're still trying to figure out how to create the 48-hour day. Yet, when you consider that in your life you have time to think about so many things, well, just think about how neurotic we are. We have time to be neurotic. Do you know how much time and investment it takes to be neurotic? Do you realize that? Because you have to think in circular thoughts, in inappropriate ways, and doggone it, that burns some calories. That takes time and practice. You have to get good at that. And some people are very good. But anyway, to be neurotic, you have to have time. If you really don't have time, if you're really simply into survival, there are many third world countries, for instance, where from dusk to dawn, there is nothing but staying alive. Or from dawn to dusk, I should say. There is nothing but staying alive. That's what it's all about. And even in this country, there are people who their lives are so on the edge that it's simply survival, survival, survival. They don't have time to be crazy. They don't have time to consider, they don't have the leisure to consider the designer neuroses that we all have time to work on. So we do have leisure to practice. We have space and time in our lives and in our minds to be able to consider Dharma. Those beings in lower rebirths do not have that kind of space or time. The way that their minds are manifest is such that they cannot practice Dharma. We love our dogs and our cats, but think about how the minds of animals actually are. My cat spends most of its life staring at the door at about this level, either trying to get in or get out. That's it. That's life for the cat. This on the cat box. That's pretty much it. And then you think about, for instance, a little bug. You know, you might think that it would be kind of cool to be a bug and live on a rose. But then you notice that here, supposing the very Buddha himself or Guru Rinpoche himself were sitting on this throne and he were teaching Dharma, and it was the most auspicious, amazing thing. Here we are at the very feet of the Master, Lord Buddha, Guru Rinpoche. So we're sitting here teaching Dharma, and then you notice that on the arm of the Buddha, a bug is crawling. And you think, wouldn't it be nice to be that bug so that I could touch the flesh of the Buddha? But guess what? That bug has no idea that it's on the Buddha's arm. It's out there. The bug is simply walking. Buddha doesn't know. The bug doesn't know from Buddha. The bug could be walking on really horse manure, and it would probably have even a more fun experience. It's just so darned organic, you know. But actually, the bug has no capacity for practicing Dharma. There's very little blessing in crawling on the arm of the Buddha for that bug because it has no capacity, you see. But for us, we are able to sit at the feet of the teacher, practice the teaching that is given by the Buddha, and accomplish Dharma. We have that capacity. We are able, if we train our minds, to recognize our lives and our situation. But the bug cannot do that. So we are taught that this precious human rebirth is extremely difficult to obtain and that it is precious. We are also taught about impermanence. We are taught, there are lines like, whosoever and whatsoever is born is impermanent and must die. Now that's true. So far, to the best of my knowledge, every sentient being that has been born has died. I don't know of too many people over 110 years old. Pretty much they all go. They might live a long time. Some live long, some live short, but they all die. Whatever is born in an ordinary way will die. For those great lamas who did not go through the passage of dying, but actually simply, there are many stories about lamas, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas that have simply leapt into space and gone. Guru Rinpoche, for instance, when he left the incarnation that we know of him as Guru Rinpoche in, actually simply rose up into the sky and went off to his next project. And he did not undergo death in the way that we know. So those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas may be able to be separate from the realm of death and rebirth, but ordinary sentient beings know what is born will die. We are also taught that if we persevere in practicing pure Dharma, that we will accomplish merit, we will accomplish happiness, we will accomplish realization, and that in fact accomplishing Dharma then leads to happiness and ultimately to Buddhahood. But we are also taught, and we are taught this in some detail, that accomplishing non-virtue, and it doesn't matter how it feels in this lifetime. You know, a lot of times we think that accomplishing non-virtue might be a good thing temporarily. We think, for instance, that supposing we really want something and we do not consider the needs of others, in fact, stepping on the needs of others and being not mindful of the needs of others, we go ahead and claim what we want. We simply get what we want, no matter what it costs anyone else. We think that that kind of thing will make us happy. But in the teachings that turn our mind towards Dharma, we are actually taught that that kind of thinking is our habit, but it does not create happiness, in fact. That if we leave others without comfort or without benefit, in fact, if we are not considerate of the needs of others and take what we want, just gimme, gimme, gimme kind of idea, that we will produce non-virtue, and the non-virtuous mind is unhappy. It has no capacity for happiness. It is the mind that of the person, and you've seen that kind of person, and perhaps have even gone through periods like that yourself, where nothing will satisfy. There is depression, there is morosity, there is simply just no capacity for happiness. It's life is seen as a bundle of problems. There is just no capacity for it. That is because not enough virtue has been accumulated in the mind, or non-virtue is ripening at that time. So we think that being selfish and self-absorbed and not caring for others and trying to gain power, trying to gain material goods for our own selfish purpose, we think that this is going to make us happy. We think a new car or a new something will make us happy, and you know, temporarily perhaps it will engage us for a while, but ultimately what we are taught is that virtue creates happiness and non-virtue ultimately creates suffering. We are taught that lack of generosity results in poverty. We are taught that hatred results in a lower rebirth, probably in a hell realm, a realm that reflects the content of hatred within our own mind streams. We are taught that killing or harming others also results in a lower rebirth. Again, probably in a hell realm, in a place, in a state, and I should call it a state rather than a place, but a state that reflects the kind of hatred and lack of loving kindness that we would have to have in order to kill and harm others. So actually what we are able to understand from this is that according to the habitual tendency of our minds, according to our activity, according to that, our experience is similar, is like that. It's almost as though, even though the world around us seems like an external scenario, an external phenomena, a thing that we move through, that's only the result of our delusion. In fact, the external world is more like a mirror, and it reflects to us the content of our mind stream. You see, the very content of our mind stream. And so where we look, if we see trouble, if we see difficulty, if we see unhappiness, then we should look within and see how we can change the content of our mind stream from that which is non-virtuous to that which is virtuous. And so these are the teachings that we're taught. Unfortunately, when students begin to learn those teachings, in Lundro, we do many repetitions of the same practice, and we actually accumulate 100,000 repetitions of each of the elements of our practice. And in order to move into that, the first thing that we have to engage in are the thoughts that turn the mind. So you can see how many times we go over these same thoughts again and again and again. Well, what generally happens, and I don't know if this is true of all Eastern students, but I find that it's very true with Western-raised students. We have the tendency to memorize the way that we do in university or in school as children. We are taught to learn with memorization. So, you know, we can say, this precious human rebirth is extremely difficult to obtain. Whosoever and whatsoever is born is impermanent and must die. If one perseveres in virtuous Dharma, this is the cause for becoming Buddha. And it just goes on and on. So, I mean, I can recite it to you, but then so could a parrot if it were well trained. But perhaps the parrot has not changed its mind at all. In fact, the parrot has no connection between its mind and its mouth. There's nothing happening there. It's just blah, blah, blah coming out. The parrot could be whistling Dixie, and it would have the same awareness. So how can we make our experience of such a practice much different? When we begin to practice Dharma, we have to make a decision. It's as though we have to go within or go apart, go to ourselves and meet with ourselves. And you know, this is such a hard thing to do because we spend most of our lives acting outwardly and trying to make ourselves happy in a very external way. I'll do this to get this. I'll do this to make that. I'll do this to see that. It's very outward. We never or rarely come to ourselves and face ourselves in a quiet, honest, and knowledgeable way and say, who am I? And what am I about? What should I do? What are the habits of my mind? Very, very difficult for us to approach ourselves with any kind of self-honesty and clarity. But in fact, when we first engage in the path of Dharma, that is the very thing that we must do. And for you that are beginning practitioners to hear this teaching at this point, before you know anything about Dharma, this is really good. This is excellent, and I'm glad that you have this opportunity. For those of you that have come here either already knowing some about Dharma, or for those of you that have been practicing Dharma, when you hear this teaching, maybe you have a little catch-up work to do. It's a little bit more difficult for you, but still not impossible, because I have found that in my practice is a joke, it's a sham, if I don't take myself aside every single day and say to myself, what have you actually accomplished for the sake of sentient beings? What are you actually doing? What is your motivation? Motivation must be checked every moment, every day, moment by moment. To challenge yourself, to find out who you are, to find out what is in your mind and what is in your heart. Are you dressing up in Dharma clothes because it's cool to wear a costume? Are you walking the Dharma walk and talking the Dharma talk because it's cool? Or somehow you have it in your mind that it makes you a better person? Or something like that. Constantly we check ourselves. We must check ourselves. So whether it's the first opportunity that you have to practice Dharma, or whether it's your daily practice and we have some backtracking to do and some reconsidering to do, it should be like this. We should face ourselves and ask ourselves what it is that we're accomplishing here, what it is that we're about, and what the point is, and really look at our minds, really look at the content of our minds, and come to the point where we consider why we are practicing Dharma, why we wish to enter onto the path, why this is happening. If we are to practice Dharma in a superficial, external, haphazard way, a way that will produce minimal result, then all we have to do is simply memorize. Walk the walk and talk the talk. We can practice by rote. We can buy ourselves the best mala in the gift store, and we can learn how to use it. We can become really proficient at the mudras and the bell and the dorje and all the other instruments. We can really learn how to do it with pizzazz. But ultimately in that, perhaps there will be no result. Why would there be, or little result? I mean, really, honestly and truly, Dharma is so powerful that even if we mostly thought about Looney Tunes all day long, but said Om Mani Padme Hung anyway, still there would be some result. believe it or not. Even if your mind was gone, and all you could do was to say Om Mani Padme Hum, as though you were singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Even there would be some benefit. But what if you were to practice differently? What if, instead of practicing by rote through memorization and superficiality and externals, what if you were to face your entering onto the path with depth, with clarity, with heart, with pure intention, with dignity, with nobility? You know, when your mind is just out there and you're in la-la land doing whatever, I mean, your hands are doing this, maybe you're doing your mala, your mind is over there, your eyes are over there, your ears are somewhere else. You know, when we're in that kind of state, we're maybe a little bit like the bug crawling up the arm of the Buddha. We're just kind of nowhere. I personally don't consider that just being kind of, you know, is a very dignified way to live as a human being. I can't get into it. I require more. I feel like I have to have more in my life. And so to practice in that way, and in such a mindless way, or even to live so mindlessly, with little regard for ethics, with little regard for cause and effect relationships, such as what actually does create benefit, harmony, and happiness. Living like that is really living pretty much like an animal, with nothing precious or important about it. It's not making your life a vehicle for practice. It's not making anything worthwhile. And a person who lives like that, when they leave this life, what did they take with them? The habit of extreme slothfulness and delusion, period. We do not get to take the material things we collected. We do not get to take all the fancy ideas that we cooked up while we were taking all that time to be stylishly neurotic. We don't get to take that with us either, but we take the habit of delusion. Now, on the other hand, supposing we're able to practice deeply, suppose we enter on the path and we somehow have the wonderful opportunity to be awake enough to get it, to really get it. You know, you come to the path and you are able to train your mind by practicing these thoughts that turn the mind, turning the mind towards Dharma, to the degree that we can say, really? I mean, okay, I'm reading these words. This precious human rebirth is extremely difficult to obtain. Well, we don't just say it and memorize it, but we really think about it, really contemplate it. Not only that, but go the extra mile. I mean, for myself, I think, okay, I'm 45 years old. It's Saturday night for me, boys and girls. You get what I'm saying? Do you remember when you were a kid going to school and you lived for Friday afternoon? And Friday afternoon, you're so high. You just, nothing is bad on Friday afternoon because you're going out Friday night and you just got let out and you're ready to have a good time. Then Friday afternoon's gone. Then it's Friday evening, the big night. That's kind of like being 21, you know. You get to do all these fun things and you're still young enough to live forever. And then there's Saturday morning. Well, it's still pretty good. Saturday's good. Saturday's like 30. Saturday's good. Got Saturday. It's like the high, you know, it's like a whole day. Saturday's a whole day. 30's a good decade. Got the whole, you know, it's a great decade. You got the whole day. It's bright and sunny. Picnics. There's so much you can do. You can start from early Saturday to late Saturday. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like being in your 30s. Saturday night's like around my age, 45. Whoa, it's getting scary now. Saturday's over, and tomorrow is Sunday. And you don't want to face the fact that pretty soon comes Sunday night. And that's the night you stay up as late as possible because you do not wish to face that the next step is Monday morning. So it's back to the grind again. And our lives are like that. You know, if we really practice the thoughts that turn the mind, we should consider that it's kind of like that. We really have to look at this. You can't just say this precious human rebirth is extremely difficult to obtain. Whosoever and whatsoever is born is impermanent, must die. Really, you can't do that. That's not going to work. You have to really examine and look and put your heart and your depth and your intelligence into it. Go deeper. And ask yourself if you look the same as you did 10 years ago. Do you look the same as you did 20 years ago? I don't. Do you? So you know that things are changing, aren't they? Well, what direction are they going in? We don't want to talk about it, but they're going that way, down the road, toward the dead zone. We have to think about that. This life is short, and we have very little time. If you really get that thought, sometimes people think, gee, what a morose thought. Don't you want to be happy? Wouldn't it be nicer to be happy? Actually, the method that you're being taught now produces true happiness. True happiness. Not the kind of temporary happiness that's like when you get a new toy or you hold a pretty bauble in your hand. That lasts a very short time. Or like I was talking to the children about a dish of ice cream. How long does a dish of ice cream last, and where does it actually go? That's the kind of happiness that we get just by fooling ourselves and playing the game and skating through life. But if we actually take a hold of our lives and manage to use it as a vehicle for accomplishing ultimate happiness and benefit for ourselves and for the sake of sentient beings, and that means cultivating our lives. Not only scooting through the most superficial layer of our lives, but also appreciating the depth and texture of our lives, using it as a vehicle. Coming to the point where we look at our lives and say, well, excuse my French, but no more bullshit. That's it, I've had it. That was enough, thank you. Coming to the point in our life when we realize that life is short and we don't have much time. And beginning to practice Dharma in such a way that we begin to achieve results immediately. We do not waste time. We begin to cultivate the mind, begin to turn the mind, begin to utilize the mind in such a way as to produce good result, the result of a virtuous and clear and relaxed and spacious mind, rather than a mind that simply scoots along on the surface, acting habitually and irresponsibly. So supposing we were to take our lives in hand like that and begin to strategize, and here strategize is a big word. Strategize is an important word. How to use that life. Most of us, when we practice Dharma, we have this habit of thinking, when will it hit me? When is Dharma going to affect me? When is Dharma going to make me get it? When is the miracle, when is the teacher, this is another one we think, when is the teacher going to work the miracle on me? I'm really mad at her. I've been here for 5 years and she hasn't done a thing yet. Just taught me, that's all. But she hasn't worked any miracles on me yet. I'm not Buddha yet. So we develop this habit of kind of waiting for something to happen from outside, and we don't realize that what we're doing is the same thing that we did before we met Dharma, which is kind of going through life mindlessly, habitually, without depth, without responsibility, without nobility and dignity. Just sliding through, like a mindless thing. Instead, wouldn't it be better to realize, to think about these thoughts that turn the mind toward Dharma, to really get that life isn't permanent, that things move fast, that virtue produces good result and non-virtue produces no result except for agony and suffering. To really get that, to really think of that, to really absorb that, to make that part of the fabric of your mind, takes an investment on your part. Now you have to ask yourself in your moments of self-honesty, have you made that investment? If we're really honest, we'll find that we haven't truly made it. Or if we had made it somewhat, we haven't gone as far as we need to go. Because we still, instead of taking refuge in those things that produce the result of enlightenment, we still take refuge in self-gratification. We still take refuge in our own neuroses. We like it, we play with it, we take it out every day. We juggle it, we taste it, we snort it, we sniff it, we sleep with it. Every day. We still take refuge in it. We take refuge in Money we take refuge in. Substances we take refuge in. Everything except what actually provides benefit to sentient beings. So if we really examine ourselves, we'll find that we have not, whether we are a long-time practitioner or whether we're a beginning practitioner, we have not turned our minds toward Dharma. We have not produced within ourselves the kind of mind that eagerly, hungrily embraces the path. If you are still at the point in your practice where you think, I have a commitment to practice every day. I haven't done my practice yet today. I really have to do my practice. I don't feel like it. And you have that kind of idea about your practice, or when you're assuming a commitment to a certain practice, you think, an hour a day? I have to practice an hour a day? I mean, really? Like every day? Jeez. I don't know if I can be a Buddhist. You know, we think like that. The only way it is possible for us to think like that is that we have not truly turned our minds toward Dharma. And that's not only the new practitioners that think like that because they haven't had that training yet, but the older practitioners as well. So what would you do instead of practicing your practice that day? Go see a movie? You know, what would you do? You would do something that ultimately you were taking refuge in other than your practice. So the only way that that can happen is if we had not taken the thoughts that turn the mind toward Dharma to heart. The thoughts are given to us, they are in the books. To read the books, of course, to contemplate, to memorize, it's considered that that is our commitment when we take on the practice. But the true commitment is, the commitment that we have to make to ourselves, is that we have to absorb this deeply till it becomes a part of us. To the degree that, well, let me ask you this, would you consider not breathing for a day today? I mean, it takes effort to breathe, doesn't it? You have to go in, out, you know. Diaphragm has to expand. Lungs, you know. Takes some effort. Would you consider not breathing for that day because it's just you're too tired? Well, I think not, obviously, because you won't live the day out. You won't live very long at all. Unless you're fasting for a particular health purpose, would you consider not eating that day because you simply don't feel like lifting a fork? No, you know that it's not good for you not to eat all day. You wouldn't not drink water all day. You wouldn't not sleep. Would you not brush your teeth all day because you didn't feel like it that day? You thought you'd just kind of let go of things? No, you're not going to not brush your teeth that day because you know, first of all, you'll have fur mouth, and second of all, you know that you're going to ruin your teeth. Well, for the same reason, you wouldn't not practice that day. If you have really turned the mind towards Dharma, you would never consider not practicing that day. You wouldn't consider that, and in fact, you wouldn't even consider not being in the mind of constant practice as you walk around. You wouldn't consider that because you don't want to live with the result of that. Just you don't want to live with, what is it, gingivitis? Is that right? Gum disease? You don't want to live with gingivitis, so you brush your teeth. You don't want to live with samsaric conditions, so you do your practice. Furthermore, if you have really turned your mind towards Dharma and you have disciplined yourself in realizing the difference between virtuous, meritorious, and ethical behavior as opposed to non-virtuous, self-centered, unethical behavior. If you have disciplined your mind to realize the difference between the two, you will find that just as you crave drinking water and eating food every day, you will crave your practice. You'll crave your practice because you'll feel hungry for that if you do not have that every day. There is a vague, and sometimes not so vague, hungering, a longing to be in that place of pure merit, pure virtue, pure ethical engagement. And you feel starving, literally starving, if you cannot accomplish your practice. But the only reason why you would feel that is because you have already trained your mind and turned it toward the Dharma. the students that are on and off, iffy about their practice, that go from, for instance, Dharma Center to Dharma Center, only tasting this, tasting that, tasting this, tasting that, these are the students that have not turned their minds towards Dharma. They are tasting, they are on the surface, they are doing with Dharma what they do with everything, which is nothing. And so they have not turned their minds, they are getting minimal or very little result, and that's basically it. Their minds have not been changed in order to hunger and thirst for Dharma. Their minds have not been changed in order to see and truly understand with one's whole heart the value and necessity of practice. So turning the mind towards Dharma is, one, a practice, but two, a preventative, and three, a tool. It prevents the kind of backslide that we experience when we run out of the romance of Dharma. You know, when you first get on the path, you think, oh, cool. Oh, so cool. I mean, who is in a cool place like this? I mean, just look at that. Do you believe underneath there's a sand mandala? You know, that is a mandala. You don't see those really outside of Tibet or Nepal or India. Cool. And we have all these, and look at those people. They are so, I mean, they're dressed like that, and you can take pictures with them and everything. It's just so cool. You can rub their little heads for good luck. Just kidding. But we think like that. We think, you know, the romance of Dharma. It is so cool to be a Buddhist. I mean, Buddhism. Do you know Buddhism's fashionable now? Oh, it's extremely fashionable now. Well, the Christians wouldn't have you think so, but it is actually quite fashionable. Movies are coming out about it. There's all kinds of interest in Buddhism. So you can be cool too and be a Buddhist. But then after the romance of Buddhism wears off, and it will, it's like a marriage. Yeah. Yeah, the honeymoon wears off after a while. And then it's cooking every night at 6 o'clock. You know what that's like. So after the romance wears off and the honeymoon's over, you still have to do your practice. You've rubbed all their heads and taken pictures with them and sent it to all your friends. And you've seen all of this and brought everybody you know who might be impressed, and they're impressed. It's all done. So now you still got your practice to do, and you won't be able to do your practice if you have not turned your mind towards Dharma. At that point, many students fall away. They simply fall away. Or they think, oh, there's no kick in it anymore, so what should we do? We'll go to a different Dharma center and a different teacher. When that's done, we'll try another one. We'll just collect them. Stack them, snack them, slap them, collect them. Dharma. That's what we'll do. We'll pose with them. We'll just have a great time. It'll be great. That is the typical response of somebody that has really not deepened, has not turned their mind towards Dharma, and they will not last long. They won't last long. If you, on the other hand, have come to see the connection between the seed and the fruit of virtuous intention, virtuous activity, and the result of happiness, which is the fruit, if you have come to understand that perhaps if one were to engage in Dharma, which is an activity that arises from the very mind and enlightenment of the Buddha, then perhaps the result must then also be the enlightenment and awakening of Buddhahood. And if we followed those thoughts and we really understand that time is limited and we really understand that we must go deeply into our practice and that this is what is needed in the same way that if you really want to be healthy, you have to nourish yourself. With that kind of respect for yourself and understanding for what life actually is, with that kind of clarity and nobility and dignity and personal weight, if you proceed on the path in that way, you'll make it, you'll last, and you'll have excellent result, and you will grow into your practice. You will turn to your practice as refuge. You will turn to your practice as nourishment. You will not be happy if you have not done your practice that day and not done it well. You know, if you buzz through your practice, it's a different experience than doing practice deeply. On the other hand, once again, if you have come to the point where you have not turned your mind towards Dharma and you have exhausted all of the things that have, all the pretty baubles of Dharma that have hooked you, then there is nothing left. There is nothing left. The mind is not able to go on and continue. And so we lose the path. And of course we blame the teacher, we blame the path even. We say, oh, Dharma just wasn't enough for me. Oh dear. We have to think that it may not be Dharma's fault. That perhaps we have not been honest and we have not taken care of ourselves. Characteristic of sentient beings is that we are our own worst enemies. We are not our friends. We do not have a history of being our own friends. If you watch the things that we've gone through our lives, most of it we've put ourselves through. Through not taking care, through not being smart, through not thinking. But here in the case of Dharma, at last, you have the opportunity, and in fact the only way Dharma will work for you is if you are to grow up and become your own best friend and take responsibility for that and nourish yourself. Nourish yourself and give yourself what you need to practice Dharma. So I'm talking about turning the mind towards Dharma, not in the traditional, well, it's not that you don't do it in the traditional way, but you do it as though you were not only reading the traditional teachings and learning them by rote, the way a parrot would do, but in fact taking the teachings inside, being with oneself in a deep and meaningful way, considering the practice, considering one's condition, considering the condition of samsara, and how if we face ourselves, we realize we know we're not safe in samsara. I mean, we know that. In fact, we play games with ourselves constantly to try to keep ourselves on an even keel. We know that we are not safe in Dharma. We are so afraid of our own mood changes, aren't we? We are so afraid that when we have a good day, we cling to it as though it were the last one we were ever going to have. We're afraid of our minds, we're afraid of our lives, we're afraid of old age, we're afraid of young age, we're afraid of everything, just everything, everything, everything. And so that's kind of how we go through our lives, playing escape games. And instead what I'm saying is that if we were to not practice in a superficial way and move through life the way we've moved through everything else, move through our practice rather the way we've moved through everything else, and practice deeply, taking it to heart, facing ourselves, being honest with ourselves, and seeing what we're up against, then the example that I've used is that it's a little bit like going through a room that's filled with obstacles, but you're going through the room without blindfolds on, and the lights are on, and you can see the obstacles, and you can negotiate around them, under them, over them, through them. But if we kind of abdicate our own minds and go through lives in this superficial fool's paradise, Peter Pan kind of way, where most of it's about gimme, gimme, I want, make me happy. That kind of life is like going through the same room with all the obstacles and all the ways that you could trip and fall and hurt yourself, with blindfolds on, the lights are off, there is absolutely no method for getting through that room unscathed. There's no method. And so we put ourselves through this extreme danger, where we end up wasting our lives and we haven't even gone through it in any situation where we've come out of it with a blessing, with any with any gain. The teaching is that it's like going to a continent full of precious jewels and coming back empty-handed. It's like that. And so you who are beginning the path, stop, take notice, consider the jewel that you are taking into your hands now. Consider the blessing that is yours if you have it. I've seen so many sentient beings, we have the habit of having a beautiful gift, like a golden egg, an uncracked egg, sitting in our laps, and we're looking out there for something else. We don't even open up the jewel that is our own potential, our own lives. We don't even open it. We simply look at something, gimme, 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 without opening our lives. And so what I'm saying to you is, upon entering the path, and when you wish to renew the path, when you know that you have gone stale, stop, face yourself with honesty, and open your life. Open your mind. See what it is. See what it isn't. See what you have in your hand. Examine the tools and apply them. Be honest with yourself. Nurture yourself. Be your best friend at last. Because I'll tell you this, and it is nothing but 45 years of experience that has taught me this. If you are not your own best friend, do not expect anyone else to do the job for you. It will never happen. Take care of yourself as though you loved yourself. Take care of yourself as though you were deserving, because you are, and you should. So that is our class for today, and I hope that whether you are a Buddhist or not a Buddhist, if you are a beginner or a visitor or a long-time person, that you will take this teaching to heart and renew yourself, renew your path, taking into your mind and into your purpose the needs of oneself and also the needs of sentient beings, and also the condition of samsara, so that we can really invest in our practice and bring about the most excellent result of precious awakening. I hope that we will all take that to heart. Thank you very much, and now we'll say our closing prayers.
Please turn to page 65.